They say we should have known better than to fall so deep down into this rabbit hole we found. And I was thinking.
Hi, this is Nikolai, and you're listening to my dad, Rabbithole, co-host James Jardine, and featuring Mr. Jim Tiller on the one and only Down the Security Rabbithole podcast. Plug in, listen up, and enjoy.
Deep into this pool of regrettable situations. Pitch black, think back to the last time that we were happy.
Okie dokie, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome down the Security Rabbit Hole. This is Raph. Welcome to the Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. The podcast's getting towards episode 700, and I don't know if I can believe that. It is, that's a lot of episodes, folks. I've got the crew here. James is that way. Jim is that way. Hey, boys. And then that guy, that's John Dickson. John, hey, man.
Howdy.
Howdy. As Sean Tim would say.
Yeah, just trying to get you going on a Friday. I got you.
Yeah. Listen, Friday doesn't take much to get me going on a Friday, especially with a topic like AI and security. Because as we were chatting, folks, before we started in on this episode, before I hit the record button, we kind of said, all right, what are we going to talk about, and how do we want to frame this? And one of the things is, like, if you're listening to this podcast series in order, or if you're not, the previous episode to this one with Sunil Yu. Talking about giving AI discretion is it'd be a page turner if it was a book. It's one of those things that make you go, and it's one I think I've listened to twice now, because particularly with his visuals, the visuals are great. So I watched the video, and I figured, John and I we were talking the other day. And then we got interrupted because life.
Yeah, I have those.
So you should do this as a podcast. So, John, welcome. Tell people about yourself and the fun shirts you wear during cons.
Oh, well, I didn't. I just wore a black T-shirt today, but I have them in the closet. I'm John Dickson, CEO of Byte Whisper Security. We're an AI security company focusing on the security of code created by LLMs specifically, and everything around that. But I've been in the business for 30-ish years, somewhere in there. I do this thing. I'm a CISSP, which is not a big deal, except for I've been it since 98. So I like to bet people that I have a lower number than they do. And if they have a lower number than I'll buy them dinner. And I usually win that one. I almost always win that. So it's 4649. I got it in early 98. Was that you, Jim? What's yours? Are you looking
Jim,
it up now?
I'm a 4-6.
Jim, what's your number?
I'm a 4-6. I'm not going to joke. I'm going to look it up.
Look it up. I'll find All right. Look at you. But then you have to fly to Texas so I can buy you dinner.
Did they just have
I can DoorDash you both lunch right now.
Was there just one domain on the CISSP?
Yeah, that's right. There is DoorDash, Uber Eats. You're
Email.
Right. That's fair. So I've been in the business for a while. Was originally an incident response guy. I'm a recovering incident response guy in the Air Force Computer Emergency Response Team, but been on the commercial side more than anything else. And an AppSec guy as a principal and leader at a company called Denim Group that got acquired about 4 years ago by a company called Coalfire. And throughout the last 4 or 5 years, have been working on AI security as a side hustle. I mean, true story, 2018, I think it was, I had on my list of things to really learn AI. It was like self-improvement category, learn AI. And as part of that, I put in a CFP for RSA. It's a lot of acronyms there. I apologize. And I got accepted. And I was like, well, crap, I really got to learn this now. And then I did one. This is funny. We'll talk about this. In 2019, I did one on vetting vendor claims on AI in 2019, which was really ML in 2019. But all of the stuff that came out of there is in Technicolor now. The concepts and ideas that came. That one was a peer-to-peer, so it wasn't just me talking, speechifying. It was me leading a discussion. But like it's worse since. So, Raph, you mentioned something about the T-shirts. So I started this kind of funny thing as not a marketing shtick, but more just to be part of the con scene. I did a T-shirt in 2017 that said, "I have no purchase authority." And it was meant as a joke, kind of like to the vendors to say, "Hey, look, I'm a vendor too. Don't waste your sales pitch on me. I'm a vendor." But it kind of hit the moment because it being, RSA became crazy commercialized, crazy pitches, all this stuff, and it took off. I did one in 2017 that was it was pretty funny. I got to admit, I found a Russia T-shirt that had a big Russian flag. It said Russia, and it said 2016 election monitor. Like this is the whole.
That's the one I love. That is.
So it's kind of tongue in cheek, but it wasn't overtly political. And then this last one I did. Oh, the one last year was 2 weeks after the CrowdStrike outage at Black Hat 2024. I did one that said CrowdStruck. Past tense, like everybody was CrowdStruck. So they're fun. They're kind of in the moment, and sometimes I feel guilty, like I'm too old for these things. But then I come up with a good one. This last year, last RSA, as in a month ago, I did one that said, "My AI agent has purchase authority." Like I don't, but my AI agent, and I got that from a guy named Christian Adam, who's the CISO at BNY Mellon. So you're doing great when you got like CISOs that are texting in ideas for your next T-shirt. It's just kind of like, hey man. So that's
pretty fantastic.
That's the background, and it's we used to do at Denim Group these funny like RSA things, and we're a relatively small company, 10 by 10 booths, so we felt we had to do something clever or funny, and I want to say it's 2018-ish, somewhere in there, right around that time. We did a booth at RSA. We had Edward Snowden in our booth. But not the Edward Snowden. We found a guy that was a retired California State Penitentiary prison guard, also named Edward Snowden, who came and sat in our booth so he could get pictures with Edward Snowden. And he hammed it up and was like, "Yeah, I'm Edward Snowden. Here's my driver's license, pictures with Edward Snowden." And the dude, we paid him to come up and hang out with us for 3 days. And he actually completely assumed the character of, and it was like, yeah,
that's
Edward
hysterical.
Snowden. So that's the kind of crazy stuff we do. But now back to reality with AI and all the craziness. So.
Well, first we need Jim's CISP number.
You beat me by a couple months. April 1999. I had this picture of this certificate, but I can't remember the number. I think it's 49. It's a 4900.
So close.
Yep. So close, but no dinner.
And I did that. So I did that after the Coalfire acquisition. I did that, and I got up and I said, "This is at our first big meeting with Coalfire." I said, "Hey, it's this," and I do it. And one of the Coalfire leaders said, "No, I got a better number." It called me out. I was like, "Oh," I was partially like, "Oh crap!" It was like 49,000. It had another zero on the end of it. It's like, yeah, I won. So
nice.
I didn't make them buy me dinner because they just paid millions for the company, so I didn't want to.
You know what? No. I still would have. That's the rules are rules, baby. Listen, we've done some AI conversations on this topic. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure I still understand the volume of knowledge around AI. I feel a lot better though over the last several episodes and the last several months of just kind of reading and digesting and learning that AI isn't going to rise up and kill humanity. We're going to do that completely on our own, using AI as a means to make ourselves so dumb that that's my supposition anyway. That we're gonna. Here's where I think I get a little concerned. We used to be able to, we say Google something. We used to go search something, and search would return back a whole bunch of answers, right? A whole bunch of options, and some of them were good, some of them were very good, not good. Some of them were propaganda, some of them were ads. But at least you had to think which one of these, like, okay, here's a bunch of different things. Which one looks the best? Like, which one do I trust? Now you go ask any of these systems for an answer, you get an answer back. So suddenly machines become the arbiter of truth, and that scares me.
Let's take a quick break.
Should I be excited or afraid of AI? The answer is yes. It's both.
Things are going to look so different in the next couple years. You will not be ready for the disruptions that are going to come.
I'm Jeff Nielsen, host of Digital Disruption, the go-to podcast for technology leaders. Our generation's conflict, I think, is going to be emotional, not economic. The companies that are going to win are the ones that have a couple of characteristics. Stay ahead of the curve with Digital Disruption. Available now on your favorite podcast platform.
Well, the first thing, there's a lot to unpack there. That was a really long and involved question, so I'm going to answer it in a multi-factor.
I know. I'm not sure how many questions I asked.
Yeah, I don't even
There's
know
at least one
question. That could have been like a statement.
This is a very long statement.
Okay, so first of all, you're not uncommon. I think everybody that is in the industry that's modest says the same thing, which is like, maybe the biggest thing in our career, still trying to figure it out. And I mean, I've asked that same question to people like Diana Kelly at Protect AI, Adam Shostak, Robert Hansen, people that you know and I know, and folks that, and they're all different variations of it, which is could be the biggest thing since the internet, still trying to figure it out, going really fast. It's like, okay, that's in that panel I did at RSA on Shadow AI with Anton Chuvakin and Diana Kelly and Michael Bernhardt. That was a consistent theme, like really early, really, we don't know where this is going, trying to figure it out. So I think that's a great starting point. Our particular area of focus is in the safety and security of code generated by LLMs and AI. So that's one theme there is.
So you love vibe coding is what you're saying.
Well, I mean, that's one way to paraphrase it. I would say that right off the bat is this is a broad and very complex market. Complexity is a constant theme here. Complexity. So you can be a data scientist and never be exposed to any of the security use cases ever. That's actually quite true. You can become. I mean, just the sheer interpretation and finding use cases for it in companies is quite hard, right? I mean, so there's a focus of the LLMs, and if you work at Anthropic or OpenAI or Meta or something like that, that's your focus is creating better and bigger and faster. But on the corporate side or on the product side, if you're a vendor, it's a different play. And so what I see is a rapid kind of specialization, is for lack of a better term. So you might know one aspect of it, but the guy right next to you knows nothing about it. And I'll give you a great example. My co-founder at Byte Whispers, a guy named Kyle Hankins, his wife is a PhD data scientist at Stripe. So by osmosis, we picked up a lot of her observations, but it's true. Just like it's so specialized and so deep in so many different areas that it's easy to quickly get confused and to get whatever. And I think then the last thing I want to address to your question / statement / kind of observation was the trust of the outputs. I think for whatever reason, we've already learned to distrust or at least caveat what we get from search engines, Google specifically. But there's like this over trust because it can kind of be conversational, natural language queries, natural language responses. You ask a follow-on question, it remembers what you just asked. That infers that you're having a conversation and there's memory and there's understanding, which is absolutely not the case. It's mimicking. It is not passing the Turing test to some degree. It's literally, going and looking through its language model and trying to come back with a response based upon what it has. And sometimes it's right, sometimes it's not. But the thing that I would say there's a constant theme for us as security people is don't trust the outputs. Be skeptical. I mean, you can use it for, just brainstorming. But geez, I'll give you one quick story as a great example. When we first started about a year ago, we had a client that asked us to do training on top 10 vulnerabilities for LLMs. OWASP has its top 10 for LLMs. So like, okay, cool. There's stuff out there. So instead of building a coursework for it, I did what most human beings do now, which is to jump on ChatGPT and say, give me a course outline for a 4-hour block of instruction based on the OWASP top 10 for LLMs. And I was like, looks good. I got copy and paste, sent it off to Kyle, our CTO, and said, hey, man, problem solved. ChatGPT. Like, cool. And sometime later, he texts me and says, 911, call me. And he goes, look at it more closely. And like the top 10 for LLMs, somewhere after prompt injection, started to pull in top 10 for mobile and for web. There were just 4 or 5 other. It looked perfect, but it kind of just at a point started to hallucinate.
Drifted.
And it was weird. It was like a weird, and it looked great, but I just did a quick skim of it. I didn't read it intently, and it went off. And so that is a constant theme. I've been using AI Companion for Zoom for over a year now. I use it religiously, and man, is it entertaining. There are times, for whatever reason, it seems to get the next steps right, the top 5 or 6 things up top. But if you read the compendium or the overview of your conversation, there's stuff in there. It's like, I most certainly didn't say that true story, talked to an external law firm, our outside counsel, and somewhere in that AI Companion summary, it said John Dickson committed to $1 million of legal fees in 2025. I was like, nope, I didn't say that. And so they forwarded it back. And said, yeah, we love that one, but I don't think you said it. So it gets it mostly right, but when it gets it wrong, boy, does it get it wrong. So
it's an interesting thing that point that you just brought up, because we were just having a conversation yesterday about when AI is spitting things out, even something as simple as, hey, I'm asking it for HR questions, like, hey, how many PTO days do I get? Right. And it goes through and it looks through all your stuff and it's supposed to come back and say, oh, you get 8 PTO days. But instead it comes back and says, oh, you get 45 PTO days. Like, are you held to that? Where it's like, well, I mean, the chatbot said I get 45. I'm going to take them.
Yeah. Well,
like that.
It's internal.
Case study.
If it's an internal chatbot, that's one thing. If it's external, after Air Canada, they're going to probably be held to it. So
yeah, I remember that. I remember that.
Yes. So
I just want to make a point about the Zoom meeting example. What I've experienced is how humans are changing how they have meetings when AI is talking, when AI is listening. So they'll walk you through this prescription because they know it's kind of like being monitored, right? So these summaries are being shifted over to leadership management, dumped into Salesforce and things like that. So it's a very structured way. So as they're talking with you, it's very interesting dynamic at the human level.
We have a bunch of questions about it from clients too, about, what's discoverable, what's, if you're public sector, what's subject to open meetings requests. But what's discoverable? That's the one that's really tough. And then, what are the topics that might be off limits for these calls? For example, HR, M&A, really strong IP. Hey, we talked about this new discovery and filed an intellectual property disclosure that had this, So there's ways to mitigate that, obviously, with contracts with these providers and to run stuff locally. But I think that theme there is most people don't make those quantified decisions. Should we do this versus that? They're just doing it a lot of times. And that's the part that's quite interesting, I think. I'd say one other thing, too, that came out of that panel, and one thing that we've lived is this just has the same kind of weird feel as the early 2000s when cloud and mobile was happening. Was this rush to the cloud initially for cost savings purposes, but then there's
was it the same velocity, John? Was it the same? Because it feels like that, but this is much faster.
Much faster. And I was going to just draw a distinction between those and what's happening now. There is a top-down pressure that didn't exist for those types of plays that exist now with AI. If you have a subscription to Harvard Business Review magazine, I do. I'm an MBA type. I mean, like every other article is about, AI this, AI that. So you have these mostly non-technical CEOs reading this stuff saying we got to go faster. And this downward pressure creates all kinds of challenges, including shadow AI. But there's an imperative to move quick because of the existential nature of AI. There's a perception that whether it's right or wrong or true or not, is that companies with AI are going to be companies without it. So if we don't have it, if we don't implement it ASAP, we're going to be a relic. And that's different. The complexity, and the downward pressure, I think, are vastly different than before. I mean, cloud was pretty straightforward. Mobile, IoT, this one, I mean, there's actually PhD data scientists floated around doing this stuff. It's hard, right? I mean, it's more complex to understand. It's hard.
Well, cloud was less visible too, right? I mean, from an external user standpoint, like on-prem cloud, you don't really notice that. Use of AI, you tend to see that more, right? As an end user, as a business, so that is going to have a lot more driving factor in the business.
I'd also add to that is the barrier to understanding AI is virtually nil, right? So when you talk back in the day at early cloud, you're trying to explain, we're going to have this other company do our IT and applications just float around. Hence, you just drew a cloud, right? Because it's oversimplify it.
Yeah.
With AI, there is this massive leap in assumption, right? So if I can open up my browser, go to ChatGPT and ask a question, gives me an answer, I'm like, oh, wow, I can make it do all these wonderful things for my business. And so the top-down pressure is massive. That is also kind of running counter to the actual complexities of it. It's incredibly sophisticated.
Remember what cloud computing was called before it was called cloud computing? The original paper on this was called utility computing. And the concept was,
yes, I remember that.
Yeah, the concept was you plug your power cord into the plug. You don't understand how the grid works. You don't have to. It just works, right? Cloud was the same way, kind of AI too. It just works. You have a web interface. Where it gets more challenging for the companies is not that, not brainstorming via ChatGPT, not creating, emails and stuff. It's when you start plugging it into it, or you start creating your own models and you start hitting the APIs that I would argue things get a little bit more interesting. or to put it this way, you can create more damage at a larger scale. And one of the things that we always push to our clients is, separate the consequential stuff from the inconsequential. Yes, Grammarly uses machine learning. Yes, Copilot. You can create Word documents, but what you should probably focus on more intently as a company is when your your architects, your dev leads, your technical leadership start doing things with it, downloading models from Hugging Face, creating code with ChatGPT or any of the co-pilots, hitting APIs. That is a different scale. And in that panel that I did last month with Anton did a good job kind of dividing it from consumer grade AI to business grade AI. And my 2 cents on top of that was focus on the people that are most likely to experiment and to download models and get them in the tent, get them to be involved in it. And again, it's not a bad thing. Of course, this is a good thing. You want your folks to have initiative and do things and all that. Like, that's good. It's shadow AI is a good thing. Yeah.
Can I take you in a slightly different direction? I had Hugh Thompson. You guys know Hugh Thompson, part of RSA. So I did a company webinar with you the other day. Good glass of wine, and we kind of did like this wine and chat kind of thing for some of the executives out there. And we talked about AI and his RSA keynote and all that. The question I asked him because a lot of these conversations, right? You have these people out there, and Hoff points them out every day, which is why probably the only reason I still go back to LinkedIn every day is because I want to see his commentary on some of the stupid that happens. But you get you've seen these CEOs of startups saying fire all your developers. Our coding app is going to do all AI is going to do all your coding for you. And then, obviously, like, that sounds really good, and like, fire all your support people. AI is all you need, and then you get the Klarna example where, like, yeah, that didn't work.
Yeah.
But here's where I think I bring all this back. Do you guys remember late 90s, early 2000s? We said, you know what? We don't need, as companies, to hire and maintain like these tier 1, tier 2, these lower level, the novice, right? All we need is the senior level architects. Will outsource, will farm out the rest someplace else. At that time, it was offshoring, nearshoring, whatever the hell the term was. But now it's AI. It may as well, to me, it's very similar. What we're saying is you don't actually need to learn the thing. Just use a tool or use this outside party, and then just the smart people. And then the smart people, like, generationally work themselves out of the loop, and they retired. And we're like, all right, next generation. And we looked and we're like, oh crap. We've got nobody that knows anything. And then we had this massive, what I think has been at least a 10-year gap of, like, the bottom level of hiring requiring like 5 years of experience and, these many certifications. People are like, hey, I started yesterday. Where do I go? And they're like, no, we're not interested. We don't want that. And it's the house of cards is so top heavy. It's buckling, and, like, in some places it already imploded, right? They had to start over. Is AI going to if we use it wrong, or if we're not super conscious of it, and I'll pose this to any one of you guys, is that the future? Like, where we say, oh yeah, AI is going to do all the coding. We realize that the corpus that it learned on was not great coders, right? It was not world-class coding. And so the net output is, oh crap.
Yeah. I'm an optimist, or an AI optimist. And now I'm characterizing myself as
good for you, John.
Realist, an AI realist. And what I mean by that is the promise is there, and there are certain strong cases for using it. But no, it's overhyped. One thing I would just want to pass on is, the hype cycle has been going on since the 50s. They've had, like, I think at least 3 AI winners, but the hype has been there since it started, since Alan Turing. Right? It really has been, including the robots being self-aware, all these different things, Skynet taking over the world. I mean, there's that too. But the hype cycle versus what brings them down to earth, which is computational complexity, and the what sounds good on paper doesn't really happen. But I think that has been a constant theme. And again, my 2019 session was on vetting vendor claims, which were over the top in 2019. It's only gotten worse. So, but what I do think what's happening is this is a profound change that you have to check in on daily. I have, in this week alone, heard statements like, I think SOC analysts are going to be replaced by AI. Like, okay, maybe. I think you're going to probably have the cliche of SOC analysts with AI are going to beat SOC analysts that don't have it. But I worry about the college hires because there is a hesitation to fight this with just brute force manpower, and that means college hires. But if you don't have college hires or interns or ways to bring people into the career field, you're right. I mean, it's going to be, like, challenging. So I've heard that. I mean, I won't name the name, but very large, widely known company that says, yeah, we're going to dial back our college hire program and just invest more in our mid-tier people. I've heard that multiple times in the last month or two. So that
sounds like an awful idea.
I guess I don't think we know. I mean, maybe it's like, you were here when we offshored all the manufacturing in 1990. It seemed like a really good deal until China became an adversary state, and then suddenly our entire, So it's safe to say, 1999, the 1990s, it seemed, free trade and that seemed right, but now we're like, wait a second, all of our iPhones are made over there, and was it, so that I don't think we know right now. I think it's.
You started off so positive, John. You started so optimistic, and
then he turned to a realist.
The tail just went.
Yeah, the tail
crap!
He corrected at the realist real fast, Jim.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we live in that world. I'd say that, on background, that's one of the reasons that I didn't retire after the Denver Group acquisition is I think guys like us need to still be in the game a bit, right? And to provide some level of adult input or rationalization of how we're doing this. I mean, we know the metaphors from cloud and IoT. We know the abuse cases and use cases. I do think AI feels a lot like 20 years ago, and we made those mistakes. And part of what we're trying to do is to get in front of that and help folks go really fast and do it in a way with some modicum of safety and security. That's it.
It's interesting to think about, like the lack of college interns and bringing people straight in because, okay, AI could do the simple stuff. The biggest thing I see when you're dealing with AI code is the ability to troubleshoot what it got wrong.
Oh,
right? Is to be able to,
right?
I mean, it's fantastic, right? You start typing some characters, you hit tab, and it's like, boom, here's 30 lines. It'll do exactly what you want, except for, oh, wait, it got the wrong API endpoint. It got the wrong queries that I want. And, when it breaks, if you haven't been somebody that's built before and all you do is take pre-built stuff and you have to troubleshoot it, like how do you get to that point? And it's interesting. I think about this. I just had AT&T fiber put in like a month ago, switching, and I was talking to the technician installing it, and he's a younger person, and I asked him, do you just do fiber? And he's like, no, I do some of the copper stuff too. But he was talking about how, some of the older curmudgeons that are around that know the copper like the back of their hand, and the people that just have been trained on fiber and now have to go back and do copper stuff. And it's like all these little nuances. He's like, fiber's easy, right? Like there's no attenuation through the line. It's just there. Copper, like there's so many things you have to know.
There's actually power going across it. What?
And so you look at that and compare that to the development world, right? Where you got people coming in where they've been brought in that, hey, look, all I do is it's autocomplete. I don't even want to say on steroids because you can't even say steroids here. Like it's autocomplete to the millionth level. I mean, it was great when we first got to the point where you could hit dot and there was some functions that popped up and you're like, oh, this is what I need. Let me grab this one. And then it started telling you what all the parameters were.
Yeah.
And now you hit tab and it tells you it's done. Like, here's your code. But then when you go to hit build, you've never spent 3 days looking for the missing semicolon.
You don't know how it breaks and where it breaks and why and all that. No, I don't think we know. I mean, that's the fun part of being on the bleeding edge is we don't know. But that's kind of interesting, intellectually interesting too, and fun, right? And I mean, I'll just tell you the story. That panel I was on, we had prepared for it. We'd done well, and again, it was, people that are largely smarter than me, and we get up there, and it went really, really well. It wasn't until after that I watched it and realized there were a few things that the folks said. I was like, wow, that was quite interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way. I was so darn in the moment, like trying to rehearse in my head what I was going to say next, that I didn't really pay attention to the other panelists. But it was like the next week I got the credentials. I'm like, okay, oh, interesting. I hadn't thought about that. I went back and listened. So I'm in the middle of it, and I'm advising clients and talking about this. But like, I'm in this panel going, oh, that's a good point. So that's what's happening across the board. That's why even here, we'll probably come up with some nuggets that we hadn't thought about. And I just think it's quite interesting. And I'm old enough to say I was there in the 90s during InfoSec, when it was InfoSec, mid-90s. And same. It's just kind of like there wasn't enough to come up with frameworks and best practices, because at that time we really didn't have much repeatability of anything, and it's evolved. So,
John, can I be a pessimist, or at least a realist / pessimist to your optimist / realist? And here's why I'm probably more cautious, because I've kind of seen similar things, right? We all four of us have been around since before things were this cool. 300 baud modem coupler is cool. the way that cloud impacted our lives, it suddenly catapulted and made available tons of compute to places that otherwise couldn't afford it or couldn't do it, right? So it very much democratized high strength compute. What AI is potentially doing is either, and this is kind of the swing for the fences thing, right? Where there's no little gains here. This is like moonshot or bust. And on one end, it has the potential to give everybody a massive increase in intelligence, in ability to problem solve, in speed of task completion. Something as simple and extremely frustrating as coordinating 6 people's calendars, right? Like, hey, when's the next time all 4 of us have a calendar opening? We could spend the next 10 minutes and try it, or my AI agent can do it in 30 seconds. However, let's look at the other side of this, because it is impacting so much. James' example of just spending a week chasing a missing semicolon or a typo in a freaking variable, done it. As humans, that taught us to be super critical thinkers.
Yeah.
And I think I can say this about all technology, starting with social media and devolving from there. But I think AI, the way the consumer is using it right now, has the potential to be catastrophic for knowledge if we're not careful.
Our critical thinking. My wife brought this up. We were talking about it last night. And by the way, don't ever call your wives a Luddite. I found that out. That doesn't really work. I did that. I was like, I think you're actually a Luddite, baby. And she beat me over the head with that one. But
how was the couch?
Or doghouse.
The other out. Yeah, exactly. But we were having a funny discussion because she was worried about that. And I said, well, I think it's, critical thinking is still important. It absolutely is important. But there's is it okay to have knowledge outside of you? We solved that with Google like 20 years ago, or Google solved it for us. That we don't have to have all the knowledge here. Her point was you have to know things. I agree with that. I'm a big fan of the book Deep Work by a guy named Cal Newport. And there's times when I do writing, a lot of times I turn everything off and I write on a yellow. My first iteration of something I write down hard copy, and then I'll voice to text it the second draft into a computer, and then from there edit it. But I get all that, and thinking, I would say in an abstract way, I totally agree with that. When you're trying to think of something new or trying to connect the dots in the entrepreneurial world, trying to tweak your value prop or trying to figure out what resonates with the client. What ChatGPT can do and the others is to help brainstorm, but they're not going to solve the problem. They'll get you there somewhat, but they're not going to make you think and connect the dots in a way that is impactful. I don't think, not yet. Maybe at some point. I don't know. So
I think that's where we see some of that, right? I mean, I remember back when Visual Basic 6 had, IntelliSense, you didn't have to know all of MSDN. You could hit the dot, but it didn't cover every function that was available, and so you start thinking about, okay, think to Raf's point, right? You're taking away some of that critical thinking. If I was in the interface for that and I'm writing some code, at some point somebody gets limited to, I could only do this because that's what the dot told me. And it was like, oh yeah, but if you actually typed out XYZ, whatever, there's a function there. You can call it. It just didn't know it. And we didn't have that capability, or we did have it because I know it was there. But if you don't have that capability to go past what you're being shown, you start losing that? And now
that's my fear. The
advancement that could be there, you overlook because you didn't even think to go further than what was returned back.
And that's the risk.
And my evidence for this is next time you want to go someplace, don't use Google Maps or Apple Maps.
Well, I can do that. I'm ex-Air Force guy, so I can navigate. I know
he's navigating by the stars in the daytime.
For those of you listening,
I just daytime celestial navigation. Yeah, I'm not that good. I got what you said, but I think
it's hard.
We're dependent on it. But I agree. No things. By the way, the true story, Air Force story. For those who don't know, the Air Force stopped training folks on celestial nav in the late 90s, I think it was. They just started a few years back to reintroduce that because they're assuming that GPS will be not available during the time of war with a what they call a near peer, or think Chinese. So they had trained an entire generation or two of Air Force pilots and naval aviators on GPS and didn't know anything about celestial nav. And now they're redoing that where they're training them on celestial nav, and at Red Flag and Top Gun, they're training in what they call GPS deprived environments. And if you want a funny, interesting story, just Google NOTAM and NOTAM, Notice to Airmen, and that. When McCarran puts them out, or they put them out on the West Coast, like, hey, if you're flying around here, GPS is not going to work. So they're actually doing that and jamming GPS during these things. So I agree with that concept. Like, do you have to know where north is and south and all that? Yeah, hell yeah.
Well, I mean, so we have covered so much ground here. I don't even know what to title this episode anymore.
AI musings. Yeah, I would say ask ChatGPT. Just ask that question.
No, I'm not. No, I want to know.
Let AI title
this
it.
has to have some use still.
My wife's not a Luddite. John gets in trouble for calling his wife a Luddite.com.
I was going to say that's the title of the episode. John's wife is not a Luddite. We love you. Please let John back in.
Yeah.
Listen, so technology advancement is great, right? But the same thing I said to Hugh, and I think we kind of stumbled over this because it is such a, for all of us that like to look forward and live on the bleeding edge and champion advancements in tech, because let's face it, we've saved more lives. Our lives are better, richer.
Yeah.
It's not even comparable.
Yeah.
However, caveat. It's like when we put social media, when Facebook and Twitter started, right? Suddenly we gave people access to each other in vast distances and voices to people that otherwise wouldn't. And that is a great thing until it's not. And so I heard this somewhere, and the quote was like, it's one of those axioms or whatever. I forget what it's called officially, but it takes about 10 years for society to realize the impact of any major change.
Yeah.
Right. So we put Facebook on the market, and 10 years later, we're like, oh God, what have we done? Like, we put cloud out there and we went, hey, great idea. This is going to be better, faster, cheaper. No, it's actually only some of those and probably not cheaper. And then, like, every time we do this, we go, this is all these great things. And then it turns out we got to either scale back or realize we were wrong on some things. The things that we get, the benefits of AI, being able and being able to read MRIs at much greater scale with way, way better output than a single person could. Phenomenal.
That's machine
potentially
learning,
life-saving.
That's machine learning, not generative, which is great. That's the other thing. I agree. Hey, I would just
the differences between these things.
I would say go back and watch The Social Dilemma by Tristan Harris.
Yes, fantastic. That's a great show.
The AI Dilemma iteration of that. I've watched those over and over. I think those guys are quite bright and quite onto it, which is the unintended consequence of social media was the fact that you can't think of other things. You're just consumed by it. You're just sitting there scrolling through. That's that book, Deep Work, is really, really kind of makes that point strongly as well. I think the AI dilemma, there's certain dated components to it, but in general, the thought about the fact that the major AI companies are going 1 million miles an hour in a arms race against each other with little regard to the consequences of it, I think that is
terrifying.
Yeah, and so that's why we're in this back end to it, is because, again, I would say argue that guys like us should be involved to provide counsel to do it in a better, safe and secure way, not a crazy way.
If for no other reason, John, than to counter the Sam Altmans of the world, who will tell you that AI will save us all. You don't need anything else, and I'm really a good guy, I promise. And then you realize like half those claims are true, the other half are false.
Well, think about a little bit about unintended consequences just for a moment, if I may. Is we've talked about technology like cloud and internet and the invention of the wheel, right?
Yep.
And you come back around. This is the first time where it's the next evolution, if you will, from this concept and getting in the human mind with regards like social media and the things that algorithms can do and drive you to buy socks. They can predict when you want to buy something kind of thing. And so the net of it is this is the first time a technology is something that people are genuinely interacting with. Like people are going to ChatGPT to get like advice on marriage counseling and healthcare and stuff like that. It's a completely different dynamic. So when we talk about this historically, we have to sort of, in some ways, wipe that away and understand there's a human component here. And it's the same thing as we look at things like, let's just say somebody messed with the election in some way, shape, or form through social media, whatever you believe. At the end of the day, people believed their social media feeds and made physical decisions on that. So there's an indication that we're absorbing information and making life decisions without really understanding where that information is coming from. So the layer between the human and the computer is collapsing at a dramatic speed. And that is the difference. So we could talk about cloud and all these different things, but I think, Raph, you're getting really right there on the edge of it, right there. You're at it, man, because when you talk about the advantages to health and education and humanity and recycling and power and all this kind of great stuff, those are positive intended outcomes, but we have no idea. Like you say,
well, it's the case of phenomenal good, catastrophic evil.
Exactly.
Like both of those are possible outcomes.
Yeah.
And at the same time.
Yes.
I'll give you another example of we did a little bit of work for a utility company and helping them with policy. Great group of people. But in the discussion, what came out of this was I would say the light bulb went off. That's a cliche, but we're like, wait a second. We're looking at all of this stuff with AI through the same lens, and then it was like, wait a second. I think this is a concept from Europe, but this idea of consequentiality. What is like? We really should worry about AI or LLM created stuff that has an impact on the grid, and maybe everything else is a distant second. So like when you start to, and sure enough, they and everybody is having vendors coming to them saying they have AI powered fill in the blank. The use cases for it in the grid for resiliency and optimization are quite strong, right? But you start latching these things into the grid and they're making consequential decisions without a human in the loop. That's a problem. I mean, you turn stuff off in August here, people die. We had it 4 years ago with that winter storm where everything.
I was going to say, or in January.
Yeah, and it was like, I can tell you, I'll just, as an aside to y'all, went through the pandemic, have been in a war. That was the closest thing to apocalyptic feeling that I've ever had was that winter storm, because we were out for the count for 3 or 4 days, frozen, water, power, it was out. And I in the middle of it, made a decision 2 days into the drive to the Denim Group office to make sure it was okay. Mistake. Every single light was out, traffic light. And I drove about 10 miles in San Antonio. I saw the first apartment fire unabated, the second apartment fire unabated because all the water mains were frozen, the hydrants were frozen. And then I'm like, I'm going to turn the radio on and just listen to, whatever. Half the radio stations were off the air because they ran out of diesel after 48 hours. It was just like so this whole society that we live in is, paper thin in that regard, fragile.
It is super fragile. That's terrifying.
It was, and it was Texas uniquely unprepared for cold weather always,
Well, I think I found the title of the podcast. It's a phenomenal good and catastrophic evil. I think that's what we're going to call this.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to do this, John. We're going to do this again because this is 50 minutes into a 25-minute podcast. So we need to pursue this a little more. I think next time we'll go a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole, if you don't mind.
Or off the record or whatever. I do this idea of like smart people continue to talk to seeing what you see is is immensely valuable for me too. I got a bunch of nuggets. I'll watch this a couple times after. So absolutely.
I'm gonna. There's a feature in this that allows me to have AI try to summarize. I'm gonna test drive that. We'll say. I can't wait for the hilarity that will ensue.
Okay. I got to pick the top.
We'll see what happens.
Top 3 or 4 hallucinations from this session. Yes, exactly.
All right, John, we're going to do this again. Maybe next week if you've got time. We'll have my AI call your AI and schedule ourselves.
Yeah,
how's that?
Exactly. Wow. Nice way to end. Nice way to
All
end.
right.
Okay. Appreciate it, guys.
This has been great, folks. Thank you so much for listening. I think as far as a discussion goes, this is one of those things that we just want to keep going, right? As John just said, there's so much to be discussed here. There's so much to be talked about. There's so many places. It's consumer versus commercial AI. It's narrow versus broad applications. It's data sets. It's take over for humans or support humans, and there's just so many conversations to have. So we're gonna get back to this. I could probably turn the next 8 weeks of this podcast into AI conversations. I might. It's my show. I'll do what I want.
Yeah.
So stay tuned. Let us know what you think of the topic and if this has been helpful for you. And if it has, by all means, let us know. We'll get John back on. We'll find some other folks that have some opinions as well. So I don't sound like the only guy going doomsday here. But John, thanks for joining us. Jim, James, awesome having you on board. Folks, thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you another time, another place on another Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
This is Bella. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to leave my dad a review and share this with your friends. Bye.